So over on the NA version of the game, we have like 18 billion servants going on raid up alongside Karen for the Valentine's event, and one of those servants that should be going on raid up by the time this video goes live is Lancer Artoria. What I'm kind of doing right now for at least NA content is just picking out servants that I just want to talk about realistically. I know that Lancer Artoria is not the most insane servant, but eventually I'd like to have every servant documented on the channel, and so I gotta get around to him at some point, and I'm a huge Saberface simp, so I'm like, you know what, let's just do the Lancer Artoria thing. That sounds pretty good to me. But yeah, it is a little unfortunate that even though she gets a buff for her first skill, she still has a couple of issues that we'll talk about in this video. I still try to use her when I can, just because, again, I like all the Saberfaces, but anyone that's used Lancer Artoria will probably notice some of the issues that we talk about later on in this video. But before we actually start talking about any of that, if you have not already, make sure you leave a like on the video and you subscribe to the channel for that sweet daily FGO content. Also, if you peep the description down below, you'll see a couple of links down there, but most importantly, you'll see the Twitch link down there, which you should go ahead and click. Give your boy a follow because he streams every weekday starting at about 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, usually FGO. I'm trying to get into stuff like Arc Knights, but Arc Knights makes my head hurt sometimes. It requires me to do a little bit of too much thinking, all right? So that tends to be a little bit of an issue, but I'd appreciate seeing more of you guys come out there, and I've been seeing more of you guys come out there, so I'm just going to keep mentioning it until everybody's over there. But with all that being said, let's just start talking about Lancer Artoria, starting off with her hits. Now, she's in kind of a interesting position, I guess, with her hits, because she's got the year one style of hits, right, where everything is just really, really low. But because they're super low, it means stuff like her NP gain is cracked. It is 1.1%. And even though she's only got a 2-hit arts card, if you can find a crit on that, just because the natural NP gain is really high, you can get some really nice NP refund back on that. Unfortunately, she's not really going to be making those stars herself. I mean, sure, you could say that she's got like decent quick cards, 3 hits a pop with 12.2% star gen, even having a passive 10% quick buff. It's not like she's going to be dropping enough stars to just be doing mad crits all over the place, right? You're definitely going to need like Koyenskaya or Merlin to be alongside her. That being said, as many people probably know, they did give her stuff to actually help out with her NP gain, and the double buster cards are pretty nice because they allow her to bust her Brave Chain with her own NP for some really nice OP damage. But again, you can kind of see that she's a product of like early FGO where a lot of the Lancers had the double buster, double quick setup, whereas it probably should have just been like, oh, she's a buster servant, let's give her like a double buster, double art, so that way she has an easier time refunding her NP, but that's just my own personal preference. Suffice to say, the hits are not really going to be anything astonishing with the servant. You're going to start to see some of the, I guess, power, quote unquote, when we start looking at some of the skills. Now, moving into skill 1, I am going to talk about the buffed version of this skill, because right now it's literally just a 50% buster mana burst. But as soon as we get the Merlin Grail Front, I believe that's when this skill actually gets buffed, and it becomes a little bit better. Now, unfortunately, they didn't give it the buff that they've been giving to some other servants, where instead of making it like a 3-turn buster mana burst, it's like 3 hits of a buster mana burst for 3 turns, so you can kind of spread it out. That would have been really insane for her for more like farming purposes, because, you know, spoiler alert, she's got a 50% battery, so she pairs really well with stuff like Koyenskaya. Unfortunately though, when this buster mana burst does go away, her damage does tend to fall off, so you tend to save it for the 3rd wave. But at the very least, she's going to be really good if you want to use her for those farmings, because she gets 2 really good special damage mods in Chaotic and Evil, both at 50% values for that same turn. And the reason this is good is that Chaotic can be applied to anyone that's like Chaotic Good, Chaotic Evil, Chaotic Neutral, like anything like that. You can hit all of those attributes. Same things for Evil. You can be Lawful Evil, Neutral Evil, Chaotic Evil, and she can hit all of those people. So that makes it really, really nice, because when you get to that last wave on a farming node, and if you're using Lancer Artoria, you're going to have a really good shot at being able to hit one of these servants, because you're getting to hit both sides of the alignment chart. It's kind of why, say, like Benny Enma is kind of good as well, because she splits the buff. It's not as huge of a damage mod, but because she's splitting it up, she's able to kind of hit a lot more people, and that overall is going to help out her damage. I mean, on the turn that you have all 3 of these up, and I say 3 because her second skill, as we'll just talk about right now, is a charisma that gives her and the entire party an 18% attack buff for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown. But when you have this up, she's gonna be triple buffing herself. That's why even though I say her damage isn't super great when the Buster Mana Burst falls off, you'll see on like the damage charts and whatnot, she can start doing really good damage once she starts getting even one of those alignments, and God forbid you get both of them, right? Say you're fighting some chaotic evil person, they do stack into each other, and she just obliterates those guys. If they happen to be a Berserker or a Lancer, just shut it down because they're not going to the afterlife. They're getting obliterated and sent, I don't know, past Avalon. Do not pass go. Do not collect your $200, right? Don't do any of that. You're just not existent anymore. You just got obliterated. It does, though, still have the issue that you can't spread it out for 3 turns. Like, I really would have liked if all 3 of these were, like, 3 hits for 3 turns, because in a farming setup, you're never really going to use your face card, so you won't really waste any of those extra like Buster or Chaotic buffs. You could pretty much just save it for each NP, or at least you should be able to if you're, actually hitting the damage threshold to farm with your Buster Servants. And so I feel like it would have made her a lot more viable, but as it is right now, her first 2 waves, she doesn't really do a whole lot of damage, and then 3rd wave, she really just starts cracking down on people. And I mean, the whole reason she's able to even do Buster farming in the first place is because of this 3rd skill over here, where she gets a fat 50% battery, and interestingly enough, also just cleanses her own debuffs, right? Which is kind of where we start to move into kind of a Nero-esque discussion. Because you guys will remember that when I talked about Nero in her video, it seems as though they're not exactly sure what they want to do with her, right? They give her like a triple guts, a like conditional buff, piercing defense, like stuff that's not really going to be super good in a conventional like farming quest or whatever, right? It's like stuff that's actually really good if you bring it to more difficult content. Same thing here, although Lancer Artoria has that to a lesser degree, because at the very least, like, yeah, popping the first skill on the 3rd wave for like big damage to guarantee a clear is good. 2nd skill, fine to just have up at all times, regardless of whatever node you're going to be in. Batteries are just pretty much universally going to be good, but I don't know, it's really interesting. We can maybe see Lancer Artoria get a couple more buffs in the future. I mean, definitely we could, because her 2nd skill seems to be a little bit lacking, right? And we could definitely buff her NP, even just to give it like a little bit more damage, give it a little bit more juice. Because if we, just want to cut over and look at the NP, it's piercing invincibility, which is good. Again, something that is pretty much only going to be viable in more difficult content. But then she also refunds 20% of her NP gauge on overcharge, which you might be thinking is like really good for farming, but because she's already like got the 50% battery that's on a 6-turn cooldown, she's already got the Koyenskaya Buster looping meme kind of on lockdown. So this is actually going to be a little bit better in more difficult content where you need to start spamming your NP. I just want to see them actually give a point to that, if that makes sense. Like maybe every time she fires her NP, she gets like an NP damage buff, or on her 2nd skill, whenever she uses a Buster card, she gets like a 10% attack buff, kind of in the same vein as like say Okita's 1st skill when it got buffed. Something along those lines could be really nice, because as it stands right now, she's not a bad servant. If you get her, you'll probably level her up. You might use her here and there to just like blow up a wave, because if you only needed to clear 1 wave, she'll be decent enough, especially after she gets the damage mods. But if you want to use her as your main farmer, you might want to start looking elsewhere, because she's not really going to be all that impressive for waves 1 and 2, especially at NP1. If you're the guy that like NP5 during like Grailders, whatever, like this is not for you, right? Because if you did that, you can make any servant look a lot better with an extra like 10 to 30 levels, plus gold foes, plus like a max limit broken, max level K-scope given an extra 2,000 attack. I'm talking for like the normal people that have just like pulled a Lancer Artoria at NP1 and just maxed out her skills as per usual. You're not going to get a whole lot of value out of her, but the shell of her kit isn't bad, right? It doesn't seem like they'll give her any like actual hard survivability, right? Like an invincibility or whatever. She might be one of those servants where it's like, my survivability is obliterating the enemy. And I'm like, you know what? That's cool. If we're going to do that, maybe give her like the ability to drop some crit stars on her 2nd skill, maybe give her some big crit damage buffs, or just go ahead and buff her NP and maybe throw in like 30% NP damage whenever you fire your NP. That would also give her all 4 different buff types, because she'd have a card buff, NP damage buff, double damage mods, and an attack buff. That would be really good for her, really gas up her damage a lot more, which they do kind of seem to be doing, right? Like if you look at some of the buffs that older servants are getting, they're like really elevating how hard they can hit, because you look at someone like Kukul Khan and she's doing like infinite damage over there. And they're like, okay, well, we want our new premium shiny unit to be the best, quote unquote, but we don't want everybody else to be dookie dog water, like, in comparison to them. So I guess in the comments down below, let me know what you think and like what buffs you would like to see them give Lancer Artoria. I think it's very likely that, say, like a Star Bomb plus crit on skill 2 could be really nice. Like, even if it's like bombs 20 to 25 stars, 30 if we're lucky, and then maybe like a 30% crit buff. Maybe it's to the entire party, or just 50% for herself for 3 turns. Could be really nice. Buff the NP, slap on like a 30% NP damage buff, and then just call it a day. But that's going to be it for me. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will catch you guys in the next video.